Hi everyone, Lee Pacchia here, and you're watching Between the Lines, part of Fault Line's effort to take a look at the cracks in America's criminal justice system. There's a lot of them, but we do really great work. We're joined today by Scott Greenfield, of course, from his posh estate out on Long Island. We're going to be talking about the Flint water crisis. I got to say, it's a topic that we approach with a little bit of trepidation at Fault Lines because it's not quite in the criminal justice system, at least not yet. Scott Greenfield, don't want to put words in your mouth, but you suspect it's not even going to get there. Why is that?
Unless something comes out that we're completely unaware of at this point, a smoking gun where somebody was told, this water is poison and you're feeding it to these people, and somebody responded, yeah, big deal, so what, let them go. You're going to end up with a situation where there's a monumental harm. I mean, it's beyond belief, 100,000 people poisoned, and at the same time where there's no obvious or no apparent criminal liability. And nobody can believe this is possible, but it's possible.
Yeah, let's go back a little bit. I think I just kind of jumped into the conversation without enough context. What happened here, Governor Snyder and the local government in Flint, Michigan, made the decision a couple of years back to switch the city's water supply from Detroit Public Water over to the Flint River, which I haven't seen in person, but I can imagine in the Rust Belt, not going to be the cleanest water on the planet. Immediately as it started pouring out of taps, it was brown, it smelled bad, it gave people an immediate visceral reaction, whether it just touched your skin or, we saw evidence of lead poisoning early on in children. 100,000 people were living like this for years. They're actually paying for the privilege of being poisoned by the local government. I'm having a hard time thinking of a historical precedent for something like this. I've seen incidents of private enterprise poisoning the land, air, and water in communities of color. We're all aware of stuff like that, but it's different, I think, when government has such a large role to play in the story. I think that's part of the reason I'm having such a hard time getting my hands around this news story.
I think everybody suspects that it's just not possible for government to be just that venal, malevolent towards a group of people. To what end? I mean, a company that pollutes the land does so for a profit motive. We know why they're doing it. It's just a really lousy thing to do. But why would a government do this? Let's face it, it's not coming out of Snyder's pocket one way or the other. So what does he care? Don't hurt people. Mm-hmm. Well, the fact is that it's hard to imagine any scenario where the governor or any individual affirmatively knew that we are poisoning people and shrugged and said, who cares? Who gives a damn? At the same time, it's shocking in its recklessness that a government would hear the complaints until eventually the University of Virginia researcher provided his findings that this water is poisoned with lead, and just do nothing. And then you have a period of time after that where I believe they called DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, where they said to the governor, we don't think it's poisoning anybody. Could that be possible? Are they that incompetent? Are they that incautious? And it's just beyond comprehension that anything of this magnitude could simply go on at all, no less for as long as it did. And that's because we're a bunch of idealists and actually believe that government is not run by flaming nutjobs who don't care and really hate you.
That said, Scott, let's try to channel a hypothetical here. You've seen a lot of combat in your years. What constitutes criminal neglect when we're talking about government?
Well, when we're talking about government, we're talking about a crime. We're talking about a minimal mens rea of recklessness, meaning that somebody actively knew the danger and chose to consciously disregard it. They knew they were poisoning people, and they said, who cares? That's a smoking gun that has yet to be found. They've got hundreds of emails back and forth and reports and all that. And what you see is just nightmarishly bad, callous governance. What you don't see is that anybody actually said, wow, we're doing this. Oh, well, let's go have dinner. And
Right.
that's really where the line gets drawn. And like I said, when you're talking about this magnitude, it's almost inconceivable that you could have governance this bad that hates its people this much that it wouldn't have looked harder, taken it seriously, done something, stopped this from happening years in advance, or at the very least in the 6 months it certainly should have known and didn't, that he was poisoning people.
So a Michigan prosecutor has been appointed to investigate this entire mess, but isn't there a conflict of interest here? I mean, the state ultimately is going to end up paying an awful lot of money to cover the damages here. I'm sure Ken Feinberg's expecting a phone call if he hasn't already received one. There's going to be a lot of money at play here. So they go out and they get a Michigan prosecutor to investigate what happened. I mean, that looks like a conflict of interest to me, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, that's a funny question, and it's an argument that's made with some regularity for good reason. How does a guy on the government dole sit in judgment of the government? Yeah, it happens all the time. It happens with police officers. It happens with all kinds of politicians engaged in dishonest conduct. If you talk to a prosecutor, what they'll say to you is, A, I'm not political. B, I don't really care. And C, if you can't trust prosecutors to do their job here, then you can't trust them to do their jobs ever. In which case, why have prosecutors if they're continually conflicted? Is this case different than any other? Maybe because of the massiveness of it. At the same time, if there's a constitutional violation, there's nothing to preclude Loretta Lynch from stepping in and throwing her 2 cents around. The feds have their own people to do this sort of thing, and they could certainly come by and say hi if they want to. No one's saying she can't.
A lot of people are looking at this story. I'm sure we're going to be following it for weeks to come. Scott, what are you going to be looking at as this story unfolds? What's the piece of evidence you were mentioned before that really would make this story turn the corner? Any sense on what that might look like?
It's going to have to be something in writing, an email, acknowledging that, yeah, we know, but, and showing that despite an understanding of the enormity of the harm, they simply decided it wasn't worth doing. In the absence of that, you're not bringing down a governor.
So someone has to basically put in writing that they fully understand that children are getting lead poisoning as a direct result of the decision that they made to save the municipality and the state money. I'd have a hard time believing someone would actually put that in writing.
And that is why I have a hard time believing there's going to be a prosecution here.
Scott, thank you for your time today.
Always a pleasure.
That's Scott Greenfield, contributor to Fault Lines. If you like the stuff we're working on, be sure to go check us out online. You can find us at MimesisLaw.com under the Fault Lines tab. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Lots more stuff coming. If you're listening to us on a podcast, do us a favor and write us a review on iTunes. It makes all the difference in the world. If you want to read Scott's article on this topic, you can find a link in the description to this video. I'm Lee Pacchia. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, well, you know what they say about the path to perdition being paved with good intentions, Lee. This particular bill was sponsored by a representative named Martin Lalonde, who is a former environmental lawyer and clerked to federal court judges, which means